if enough
code
people
violation, right,
are pitching a fit, they'll find something.
they'll find something. Isn't that like the truth though?
Right.
If somebody's got their eye on you, they're going to find something to prosecute you for or
We
to come
have
after you for
hundreds of thousands of laws that we don't enforce
all the time.
all the time. They want, this, like when I sit down and talk with people and they come in, they've got like 37 charges. I had a guy recently in Cobb County.
37 charges? That must mean he really did something wrong.
I said, who
did you
piss on?
Exactly. Who did you make mad?
And just let everybody know, he got convicted of none.
None of them.
0.
They just came after him, basically.
Now, he had like a $100,000 bond. So he sat in jail for like 6 months, but
What are you going to do?
That's right.
Georgia lawyers Bob and Irreverent D talk law. Listen up for stories about how things really happen in our legal system. Who are these guys? Dwayne Singleton, Irreverent D, is a criminal. Turn page. Defense attorney. Benjamin O Bengtson will personally injure. What? Oh, wait. Is a personal injury attorney in Atlanta. Now, sit back and take a listen as Bob and Irreverent D talk law.
All right, Bob, let's do it.
All right, Irreverent D. Let's talk about the news.
And now, the news.
The DOJ is investigating cybersecurity breach in the judiciary system. Want to talk about that?
Cybersecurity, that sounds terribly interesting to nobody.
Negative. All right, let's see what else I got. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Didn't we promise we were going to get back to this?
We did.
Yeah,
we're not going to talk about it now.
No, we're not going to.
There's a lot there.
There's just a ton. Like we could spend.
There's a lot there. Very little money to be made.
Exactly. Like if you so just real quick.
The sausage. Show them how you make the sausage.
How they make sausage. So if you say something that's like completely outrageous,
right,
to somebody else,
hurt their feelings real bad.
Absolutely. If you have a piece of paper,
you can sue the hell out of them.
And you have a crayon,
yes,
and you have $300,
yes,
you can absolutely sue them.
But do you recover any money?
Oh God, no. I mean,
it
we'll find out.
Depends.
Maybe we just need to find out.
If you're Johnny Depp or something.
That did happen. Okay, so tell me about that, because you followed the Heard Depp thing.
My wife followed the Heard Depp thing. I learned through osmosis because it was playing all the time.
So you but while you're listening to her talk about it, you're thinking with your lawyer brain
that I would have never taken this case, but yet,
and yet
he
millions
got
and
millions of dollars later. And that's a perfect example, though, of how good lawyers can change the whole situation.
So give me the basics about what happened.
When he originally had his case and he filed it over in England, he lost.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. And then he came back and they filed, he filed the same thing against her for defamation, slander. And
because she was saying all kinds of bad stuff about him, about he was drunk all the time and whatever.
And America just destroyed. They were just on point. Completely on point. The good lawyers asking good questions from the very beginning of the case to the end, and it just made a huge difference. They vilified her, made him look like the good guy, and even if he didn't get a dime, it restored his career. It was brilliant, brilliant lawyering, and they got a judgment
and good PR.
Oh, absolutely.
Like everybody's talking about him and her right now, right?
Well, and it's a perfect example of how much jurors and people look at how you interact with your lawyer. And I tell clients this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got to act like we like each other. And we got to like each other. Because if you are mad at me or hate me, they're going to feel that and you're going to go to prison. Right? Yeah. And
we talk about that all the time in the context of my clients.
With civil cases.
I say, listen, you and I have to be partners.
Right.
Like, you're not paying me to do something. Like, I'm not a waiter that you tip at the end of your case.
We're in this together.
If I gave you good service, like, we're partners. When we have to be acting as partners in this case, because if we're not working together, then we're surely both going to lose.
Well, it's just little things like him pulling out his chair for his attorney.
Oh, he
and
did
them
that? I didn't see
sharing candies between each other. And then with her attorneys, they were clearly upset with her after the media kind of got into it. They're turning their shoulder to her. They're not talking to her. They're
they're
leaving
like
her.
shunning her.
They're leaving her in the courtroom by herself when they walk out. And the media ate that up, and the people ate that up. And you can't tell me it didn't have an effect on the jury, because I know it did. So,
Wait, are you saying that the jury would be like,
they're watching everything you do.
they're not supposed to, though, right?
They're not supposed to, but they are. They're looking at everything
But they were like
you say,
specific. During that
everything you
trial,
do.
the judge has to be saying, you jurors are not supposed to be watching what's going on in the media, right?
Jury instructions are long, they're convoluted, and they're confusing.
Are you saying that people don't follow the judge's instructions?
I'm saying after trial, when I talk to jurors, they come up with all kind of reasons for their decision, and very few times does it have anything to do with what the law says.
Yeah, we need to talk about that in our next episode, because I've come to the same conclusion in civil cases where I talk to jurors afterwards. Let's benchmark that and come back to it. Put a pin in it and come back to it. All right, so let's see. The next thing, I do want to talk about this one. This is a weird case where, so this guy was driving along, minding his own business, and he got hit by a taxi driver.
Okay.
And the first thing you think if you get hit by a taxi driver is, well, okay, we have to have somebody to recover against.
Right.
Because obviously the taxi company has to have insurance.
You would think.
You would think. Or, this also happens sometimes if you're hit by like a driver of a ride-sharing company.
Right.
Not to use any particular names. You think, okay, this guy is driving for a ride-sharing company. Obviously, they have to have insurance coverage. You would think.
Right.
So what happened in this case was this taxi driver was working for the taxi service company, and the taxi company that was maybe employing him, maybe having him as
Do we have another independent contractor?
I feel like we do.
This keeps coming up.
It just keeps every time.
Right.
But maybe he's an employee, maybe he's an independent contractor, whatever the case. The taxi company was supposed to have insurance coverage on this car, and guess what?
They didn't.
They didn't. They failed to include his car or his name on the policy. On the policy.
So we've got an at-fault driver.
That's right.
But we have an insurance policy.
Maybe.
It's just saying we don't cover this driver of this car.
Right, because if you...
so they're denying coverage.
So to be very specific, the guy who was hit was looking for insurance coverage for the person who hit him. That person is the person who's responsible to him. You can get a judgment against the taxi driver all day.
Right. It's the individual that's responsible.
Always.
The insurance company is just there to pay the judgment if they're responsible for that.
That's right.
You're suing the person that caused the damages.
Yeah, and Dwayne,
people get confused about this all the time.
All the time.
I have new lawyers that don't understand this, and I have to argue with them and explain it to them.
I have clients who have been clients with me for, I want to say years, but like for a long time, and I have said this. Listen, when you're hurt, it doesn't matter if it's a car wreck case or if you slipped and fall in somebody's restaurant,
medical malpractice.
That person is the person responsible to you for your damages.
Right.
What we want is an insurance company who's going to pay on behalf of that person, because it's really hard to collect from a person.
Because then we get into the situation we talked about before, people being judgment proof.
Right. We talked about the city of Atlanta police officers who...
A paper verdict. A verdict that's very hard to collect.
$2 million verdict against...
That look beautiful on the wall.
That's beautiful. I have one of those. Someday I'll take you to my office.
I've got 180 sitting in a drawer somewhere.
Right.
I look at it every now and then. And I'm like, there it is.
There it is. So what we're looking for coverage. And
right.
if you think about it, as a consumer, as a person who's just driving down the road, you think to yourself, well, how is it possible that somebody could hit me and not have insurance coverage? And in fact, this happens, I want to say all the time, but it happens a lot.
Right.
Where somebody, whether it's a taxi driver or it's just some Joe who's driving around at 2000.
Is this a good time to talk about uninsured motorist coverage?
Like, I'm kind of leading to that, right? The main thing that I tell my people, and sometimes it's water under the bridge because they don't have the coverage yet,
Right.
is, look, if you have something to cover, you need to cover it yourself. Like, if you have something to protect, you've got a family, you've got a job, you've got all those things, right?
So if I have full coverage,
Full coverage.
I hear this all the time.
Right.
I got full
Don't worry.
coverage.
Don't worry, Mr. Bob. I've got full coverage.
Does
That's
that
right.
include uninsured
No.
motorists or underinsured motorist
No.
coverage?
So in the insurance industry, full coverage just means that you're covering yourself if you cause damage to somebody else, and you're covering yourself if somebody caused property damage to you.
But I thought the whole purpose of insurance was to protect you.
Well, okay, depends on who you is, right?
Okay.
Okay, so let's make it specific. We're talking about me,
Right.
Bob. I'm driving down the road, and I accidentally rear end somebody. So,
I'm Big D sitting in the car in front. I'm like, damn it, Bob, you hit me.
yeah, and so you come looking at me and you say, now, Bob, do you have insurance coverage? And I said, well, yeah, I've got a ton of insurance coverage. I've got, just in case I cause a collision. Not that I would, because I don't. But what if I didn't? What if I didn't have insurance coverage? I'm just driving around like, what do they call that when you go around without underwear on? Commando. Driving around.
Just straight up commando.
No,
no
driving around commando.
junk hanging out. Just fully exposed.
I think there's a story about that.
Yeah.
Like, we need to cover it some other
Another
episode.
episode.
Exactly. So I'm driving around commando with no insurance coverage. And you say, well, what the heck? The law says you're supposed to have coverage, Bob.
Right.
Like, what is wrong with you? And I said, what can I say?
Policy lapse. I didn't have the money that day. Whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They sent me the bill. I didn't see it. It got swept under the rug, whatever.
All right.
So it's in that circumstance that you need to have coverage for your car. If I cause the damage to your car, that is full coverage.
Okay.
Right? If you cause the damage to my car, it would also cover you.
Okay.
Right? That's also part of full coverage. But when we use the terms full coverage, we're talking about really property damage. When we're talking about the injuries to you, I rear end you and you say, oh God, this is terrible. My
Don't mess with my neck. It's been broken.
We've already broken my neck. I was fine. And now
I'm doing okay now.
Right. And now Bob rear ends you.
Right.
Right. Full coverage doesn't cover that if Bob doesn't have insurance coverage. It's an additional insurance policy that we don't include under the label in full coverage. It's called underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage.
So everybody needs to check their policy. We're not selling insurance, but everybody needs to check their insurance policy and make sure they got some.
That's right, because
it covers you.
It covers you.
So if I'm driving,
I've got a wife, I've got a family, I've got a job. I can't. The only thing that Georgia law requires is that somebody's driving around and they have the minimum of $25,000 in coverage. Well, for me, that's not going to cover anything.
So if somebody hits me and they're unlicensed, uninsured,
might not legally be in Georgia,
might not legally be here, whatever the situation is, that insurance, my policy is then going to protect me.
That's exactly right.
So,
again, we're not selling insurance coverage, but it sure makes my job easier.
I preach this to everybody. I mean, you need to have as much, and I think that I called my insurance agent and said, give me as much as you can give me, and they gave me as much as I could get. And
that's right. And the funny thing is that when people are being cost conscious about their insurance policies, they're really selling themselves short because uninsured motorist coverage is like super inexpensive.
Right, because the chances of it paying out or ever needing it is pretty rare.
That's right.
Right.
And sometimes you really need to talk to your agent about it.
Right.
And not whatever app you're looking at to tell you, because sometimes they'll talk you into even getting the uninsured motorist coverage that doesn't cover you unless there's no insurance at all.
Right.
And that doesn't help you.
Doesn't
either.
help you at all.
It's super cheap to add uninsured motorist.
I think mine was
coverage.
a couple extra dollars a month. I mean, it wasn't even
Right.
$100. It was
If you really want to save on
maybe
your
$5 or $6.
yeah
Yeah.
it's ridiculously cheap, inexpensive.
Right.
The
Everything's getting expensive.
it probably costs you less for uninsured motorist coverage than it would to fill up your tank now.
Oh,
with
for
gas.
sure.
Certainly. If you really want to save on your insurance coverage, really what you need to do is increase your deductible. And that will save you much more than any of the other costs.
Because most of the time you're only going to need insurance when there's something really bad happens.
That's
Knock
right.
on wood, right?
Yeah,
We never want anything bad to happen to anybody. But yeah, so I do the same thing. I tell my family, my friends, anybody I get a chance, and everybody's like, "What? I have full coverage." I'm like, "Let me see your
Right.
Let me see your policy."
I'll be the judge of that.
I'm like, "Nope, you don't.
Nah,
you don't have it."
not so
All
much.
right.
So
Well, I think that's good information for everybody to know. Who's our sponsor this week?
So our sponsor is myownKaren.com.
I love this company.
These people are awesome.
I'm telling you, what a great.
What a great service. Are you sick and tired of your neighbor leaving your trash on the curb all week long
I am.
and never bringing their trash can back to the side of their house?
Yes.
You have not been guilty of this, have you?
I leave it out because I work late and I normally get it the next morning.
But you're
But
not leaving it like
sometimes-
multiple days at a time, right?
I have been guilty of it staying out more than a day. I have.
All week? Have you done it all week?
I have a teenage daughter who should also pull the garbage in, but she doesn't. So, you know.
Really? You're going to have the girl in your house like pull up the garbage so that all your neighbors can see that? That's like not a good idea.
I know.
right.
Yeah, well, trying to teach her responsibility.
Good luck with that.
Right.
So, wouldn't it be awesome if you had somebody who could tell your neighbor about their infraction without you having to like actually call yourself?
Somebody that can call the manager for you.
Somebody that can call the manager for you.
And
You can
that way they
now.
don't spit in your food.
So with myownKaren.com, you can send a custom recorded, super intense Karen message is what they call it.
Nice.
So they have these messages that are like pre-recorded. You can just like send them to somebody, or you can have somebody live if you want to pay like a little bit higher service level
Blessing them out.
to bless them out.
Tell them where they got to get it straight.
They have professional actresses that are like super Karen actresses that have been trained to have the most abrasive and confrontational inflection and verbiage. If your neighbor or your coworker or your other team obnoxious parent hears this Karen message,
Sick Karen on them.
sick, like get Karen
My own
on
Karen.
them.
Everybody
My
needs
own
that.
Karen. Why have I? If I had thought of this idea, like what $1 million idea, I wouldn't have to be a lawyer. MyOwnKaren.com.
Very
so
cool.
Even one other thing, if you can't figure out what to say, they even have ghostwriters who will figure out.
They'll do the script for you.
They'll do the script for you.
Tell them the problem, they take care of it.
MyOwnKaren.com.
Two calls, that's all.
myownKaren.com.
We don't know who that is. All right, let's get back to the news.
All right, what we got?
I think you're on. Let's see. We were talking, last time, we were talking about the Fifth Amendment, and we promised to get back to the Fifth Amendment issue and to get back to, we were going to talk about civil forfeiture.
Civil
Right.
forfeitures.
So
And
what is
criminal cases.
Yeah,
I
what
hate
is
'em.
that? Because we were talking about the urine sample. Remember in the Awad case where
Yes.
where you can't be compelled to give a urine sample, and more importantly now, they can't complain about in front of a jury that you didn't give a urine sample or that you refused to.
Right.
But what else happens when that?
So one of the things that a criminal defense attorney we see all the time that really kind of chaps me is asset forfeitures, which is you get stopped, you get charged with possession with intent. You've got more than an ounce of marijuana on your car, or even less than an ounce. Let's say we've got multiple packages of marijuana.
Wait, so you're saying I could have like 0.3 ounces and 0.3 ounces and 0.3 ounces in 3 separate bags?
So let's
and
say
the
I
police-
went to my dealer and I said, I want some purple Merple and some Raging Kush or whatever it is, and some AK-47, and I got all these varieties to take home.
And they're all just like single serving.
And I took my little scale with me, so I make it weigh it, make sure I wasn't getting gypped.
Right.
And now I've got the little baggies, and I got the scale, and I happen to have my cashed out check from where I just sold a car at auction. Okay.
This actually happened.
This is a client of mine.
This actually happened. Okay.
And we're in a little East
Mville.
East Bumble,
Right.
little town somewhere, middle of nowhere. They seized the money.
Okay.
They seized his car. They took
The car he just bought at the auction?
his car he was driving back from the auction in.
Okay.
The money from the auction where he sold a car, the
Okay,
car
got
he's
it. He was
driving back
selling the
in.
car. Got it.
And they tried to take his laptop computer because it was in the car as well. Okay. So what they do is while he's sitting in jail on possession with intent to distribute charges, so distribution charges,
Okay. Because
So-
he's got 3 dime bags.
because he's a drug dealer with some money, right?
Okay. Wait, when you say seizure,
Yes.
you're saying that,
Taking your shit.
okay. So I'm trying to get this in my brain.
Okay.
What you're saying is that this guy gets pulled over
Yes.
and the police put him under arrest for in possession with intent to distribute.
Yes.
And they also take his car?
I think he also had a Vicodin that was like somewhere up under the back seat,
Like spare one for just in case you need it later?
like in a car that he had not purchased very long before this.
Okay, got
Yes.
it. So they seize the car.
Yes.
He has cash from where he just sold a car.
Yeah, he
Different
had
one.
like $12,000 cash.
Okay.
Seized the cash.
Like, seriously, Dwayne, anybody who has $12,000 in cash is obviously doing something wrong.
We proved it was from the auction,
Okay, right. You,
but we had to prove it.
you had to prove it.
That's the part that bothers me. Is like it shifts on to you
So in the
as a
meantime,
citizen to prove that you have your own
you
cash
have
from
cash and you have it
legit
legitimately.
sources, right?
like, what's wrong with?
So you're shifting
Having
the
cash.
burden onto the individual
Yeah.
to prove what they have and where they have and where it came from. But yeah, they'll take your car. They served him with the papers that
When
they're
you
going
say they, you're talking about
The government.
the sheriff's office.
sheriff's office is taking it.
Okay,
And
they
so
take your car, and what do they do with it?
they send you a notice that said, we're going to take this stuff. And you've got to respond to that notice. It's a lawsuit. And if you don't respond, they get a default. They keep your money. They keep your car. So
Wait,
a lot
look,
of,
hold on.
yes,
This happens
all the time. All the time.
all the God.
All the time.
Okay, so
You get out of jail.
right.
Your time is run. You finally got bonded out because you've been in there 90 days.
In the meantime, you've defaulted on the thing.
Defaulted on it. You come to my office. You say, hey, Dwayne, I need my money and my car back. I go look up at the clerk's office. I'm like, gone. Done.
Wait, hang on. What do you mean gone? Like what
The
happens
sheriff
to the
gets
they get
an
to
order,
keep it?
and then they sell it at auction, or they make it a drug car or a dare car and drive it around town, and
So what do they do with what does the sheriff's office do with all the money?
they just have big piles of money that they use for whatever they need to use it for. They can buy a Bearcat, big
Equipment.
vehicle, helicopters.
I mean, it doesn't come home with the sheriff.
Well, yeah. They get in trouble for that.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be wrong.
That's yes.
But you can use it for the sheriff's department equipment.
Yeah. So when
Okay.
your
I get it.
investigator needs a new pickup truck, or one of your new officers needs a new ride, you can use that money to pay for that
And that's coming
from
not
drug forfeitures.
forfeitures.
But the problem is that you're taking people's stuff before they're convicted of a crime.
I can see how that's a problem.
So in this particular case, we managed to get the stuff back in time, and then the charges got reduced down to misdemeanors and not felonies. So on misdemeanor charges, you can't take people's stuff.
It has to be a felony.
Right.
Okay, I got
But
it.
had he done nothing and didn't have the resources to hire an attorney and just sat there, it all would have been gone. And I have people all the time come in my office, and I look it up, and they're gone. Car's gone, box truck's gone.
Because they didn't do anything about
Money's
it.
gone. They're in jail.
How are they going to do something about? Well, people file stuff in jail all the time, don't they?
Sure, if you know how to write a writ, if you know how to do it,
you
I mean,
know
you
how to-
can get in the law library and figure it out.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had a call from a potential client who said, well, I got sued for this, and they didn't respond to it. Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with there being asset forfeiture cases. I have a problem with it happening before the conviction.
Well, yeah, because it's kind of a gotcha thing.
Right.
In the law, we don't like gotcha things, right?
I mean, if you want to hold it and we want to see how the case works out, that's one thing. But a lot of times the stuff is gone before they ever make it out of the door of the jail, or before they ever get a bond.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you do? So what do you do about it?
Well, as long as they followed the procedure and they did it correctly,
The sheriff's office, meaning?
then they're protected by qualified immunity.
But what can? Okay, so let's just say that you have somebody who's calling you, and they're in jail, and they
Yes.
say, "Hey, look, I've got this Hummer
Right.
that the police are holding.
Right.
What can I do?"
We file a motion for it to be returned, and then our answer the forfeiture if the state is filed that, and then we have a hearing in front of a judge as to whether or not there's enough evidence for them to seize and take that.
What does the judge have to take into consideration when they're thinking about that?
That if he believes that it's from the proceeds of drug sales were used in the purchase of drug sales.
Okay, so like the district attorney has to prove, or at least to the judge's satisfaction, okay, this car was procured from the sale of drugs.
Right.
How would they do that?
It's not hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
You just
especially
got to
having
convince the judge, right? And the judge,
oh, it's not a jury question,
no, sometimes they're easily convinced.
right? Because judges are in our
It's all
state,
part of the system, right?
right? It's in our state, judges are put in.
Most of your judges are, most of your judges are prior prosecutors.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been there, done that. They've been the one filing for the forfeiture. And, I mean, they don't lose an ounce of sleep taking stuff from people they
because
think.
the guy, right? Because the guy
Well,
who
on
got
paper, at that point in time, he's charged.
criminal.
He's a drug dealer,
He's
right?
absolutely a
He just
criminal.
hasn't been convicted yet. But you're taking away that guilty until proven.
or Dwayne hasn't gotten him off yet.
Well,
Nice job, Dwayne.
his well-skilled attorney, whoever he may choose.
All right.
What we
Well,
got?
that's it for the news. Let's talk about, can I sue for that?
Can I sue for that?
All right, this one is
So we had a question from Facebook
right.
earlier. My mom fell outside of an establishment. She fell and hurt herself. She's been dealing with a store on her own for the last 8 months. Now they're not willing to settle with her. Does she have a case?
The answer is yes. She absolutely has a case.
Okay.
The only question is, well, what is the value of the case?
Okay.
If the establishment is saying, well, we're going to offer you, $3, and she thinks that the value should be like $6, well, then you're just arguing about what the value of the case is.
Okay.
If the establishment is saying, look, we're just not responsible because it's not our property or because we didn't do anything wrong, you might have a case that you can win, but you certainly have a case.
So how do you go about determining what the value of a case is? Like, how do insurance companies, how do jurors, how do you look at these cases and make a determination of what you feel is fair value?
So the most important thing for you to understand about value is about damages. When you've been injured because of somebody else's conduct, not just because you're on somebody's property, it could be because somebody didn't do something right, but just because you were on their property doesn't necessarily mean they did something wrong. Then
So we got to be not only an owner of the property, but something had to be done wrong.
yeah, like there was
Some negligence.
Yeah, I've got a case right now where my client had walked outside of the establishment, and she was walking around just minding her own business, walking, and there was one of the stepping stones was elevated like a lot, maybe an inch or two more, one of the other stepping stones, and she tripped. She caught the front of her foot caught on the front of that stepping stone, and she fell and busted her arm. And the question is, well, was that stepping stone difference too much of a difference? where you shouldn't have it like that? And the answer is, well, God only knows. 12 people who don't care about my client are going to have to decide whether
So the jury will have to
big.
look at it, and they'll have to decide
That's
whether
right.
or not they think, yeah, you could look at that and see that's something you'd fall on. You should have fixed that, or
You should have fixed that.
yeah,
Right.
okay,
So in your friend's case who fell on outside of the establishment, there are two issues that I would think are probably important for me to know at the beginning. One is, well, okay, who owns the part of that square inch of space where it happened?
okay,
Because if it's in the parking lot and it's a shared parking lot, well, maybe the landlord that holds that entire area
is responsible for maintaining it.
is yeah,
And
that's right.
so now looks like they've gone and gotten some treatment,
That's
finished
right.
some treatment, submitted
yeah.
that in to the company, and then the company didn't do anything about it. Is 8 months too long to wait to talk to a lawyer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If the insurance company for the establishment or the establishment themselves is saying, no, we're not going to pay you what you want, or we're not going to pay you anything, that is absolutely, you need to be talking to an attorney, whether it's me or somebody else in your area, just to know, well, okay, what are my chances? Now that attorney or I might tell you, hey, look, the value of your case is $5, and if they're offering you $5, you need to take it, because I can't make it more than that.
Right.
Right. So that gets back to the original question that you had about damages. Damages are the cost of your medical care. It's your lost time from work if it's excused by a doctor and is reasonable, and your pain and suffering. And those two things, the first two things, are pretty easy to calculate. You get a calculator out, and you say, well, how much are your medical bills? And you kind of know.
Sure.
The third thing, your pain and suffering, is more difficult to determine because it's based on what 12 people who don't care about you think it is.
It's kind of hard dealing with something like the word pain and suffering. What does that
Right.
mean? What's it worth?
Yeah.
You know, my sister was involved in an accident. I can talk about this. My sister,
Right.
20 years ago, and she didn't follow up with any care, didn't do anything. Then she started to have issues a couple of months later, still didn't do anything.
She didn't pursue it.
And now here we are 20 years later, and she has to have all these issues that come from this car wreck. And so she suffered for 20 years for this. I mean, you asked me what that car wreck is worth, you know, to not be in pain for 20 years.
I wouldn't trade that.
Right.
For any kind of
$1 million,
cash.
$10 million,
Right.
$20 million. I mean, that's definitely a bad situation. But, you know, when you're young,
You don't think about those
you
things.
don't think about those type of
'Cause
things.
You think
and
you're
when,
going to bounce back.
you know,
right?
and you know, you think you're strong and tough, and I got this, and I got to get back to work. And that's something we run into too, is that people are like, I got to get back to work. I
Right.
can't go to the doctor every single day and treat because I got a job like a normal person.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, that's like saying, well, I can't afford to take my car to the shop to have the oil changed because I've got stuff to do.
So you're running on bad oil.
You're running on bad oil. You don't maintain your car. Like, responsible people need to take responsibility for their car, for their body, for all the things in their lives, because, like, you know, our bodies won't hold out our whole lives.
So
We have
what happens with the case where outside the store and you fall if you wait 2 years
and you don't do
and
anything.
you don't do anything? Can she come back later and
Now, if
sue
you-
later?
Like, if you don't file a lawsuit against the person who's responsible within 2 years, you're screwed.
That's it.
You can't do anything. The statute of limitations is 2 years. If you're waiting until the statute of limitations to think about doing something,
It's too late.
it's way too late. Yeah, it's way too late. You need to be talking to somebody, and you know, like, really, it doesn't cost you anything to call me.
And
or
I
to
think
call
this
another lawyer.
information is so important for people to understand. Like, you got to do something, or at least call us. It's
You need
free,
to talk to somebody.
right?
Well, you know, the problem, Dwayne, is, frankly, it's you and me. Not you and me in particular, but it's lawyers. We kind of make it difficult for people to feel like they can call us or talk to us. You know, for me, if somebody calls me, you know, somebody has put that person in my path, and my job is to help them some way or another. Maybe I represent them. Maybe I tell them they don't have a case. Maybe
Right.
I tell them they do. But, like, I'm not going to talk down to them. I'm not going to talk over them. I'm going to talk to them like you and I are talking right now, and talk about, okay, well, yeah, you have a case, but you have a case maybe I can't afford to work on because it's too risky.
Right.
Or you have a case and I really want to work on it because I think, I can get you money, I think I can make money. But the problem is that, like many people feel like lawyers are not approachable. I think we have to do something about that.
And it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, each case is different
Every
on how
case is different.
And the problem I run into is that I try so many cases. I'm in court all the time. I have to have a system set up to screen and look through these cases so I can meet with clients and talk to them and spend the time that they need to, because I was trying to spend time with the people that
you're already representing,
have a case, and we're in trial together for 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Right.
Where every day is devoted to that case, and it's a balancing act.
It's hard. Well, I mean, it's not dissimilar. It's not much different than the way people feel about doctors. Right? How many times have you heard a person talk to you and they say, well, I went to the doctor, and then they feel like they have to qualify it. They say, well, actually, I saw the nurse.
Right. I saw the PA.
I saw the nurse practitioner. I saw the physician's assistant.
Right.
People want to know that they talk to the lawyer.
Right.
Or they want to know they talk to the doctor. They want that one-on-one time. And frankly, sometimes it's hard for you and I to be able to split our attention to be able to talk to everybody.
You become a product of your own success, because so many
Right.
people want to you, and you have so many trials coming up, it becomes more difficult to.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
What do we got?
I think that's it for today.
This was super fun.
Yeah, I know, right?
Thanks.
I really like talking about this stuff.
I hope people find it interesting.
The problem with being a lawyer is that I think everything's interesting. I like nerd out about everything.
Oh, yeah, and I go way into rabbit holes on stuff that I shouldn't go into.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time when Bob and Irreverent D talk law.